how do we see it from the angle or from the perspective of dharma? Since you are a scholar of dharmic traditions, so how do we see it from that angle? Is there any
Wonderful.
specific criteria or any scripture says something about that how should we lead our life, especially a woman? And the I mean, I'm not pointing on that uh, particular statement, but yes, I'm just talking about the ideology of how women should live their life.
Well, I think, thank you for the invitation to a question which could be a Chakraviewer in its own right. I
Oh my god.
appreciate the skill with which
Hmm.
you presented that. But I think we can derive a great deal of wisdom from the
Hmm.
guidance of people who studied a whole of life. You know, I recall when I was in my teens, I was a different person. I had a different understanding. I had a different vision. I never had any expectation that Dharam Vidya and Dharam Gurus would take me, beat me up, and dust
Hmm.
me down and create a better person. The whole
Hmm.
of life journey teaches many things. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for every young person to step back and try and look at the whole of their life. Ki aage kya hone wala hai? You know,
Yes.
there is a time when we're going to be vulnerable. There is a time when we're going to need protection. There is a time when we're going to need community. There is a
Hmm.
time when we're going to need to learn in difficult times from the experiences of elders and of other people who have walked the journey that we're planning to walk. The
Hmm.
person who thinks that they can go from the beginning of life to the end of life on
Hmm.
their own will learn from their own mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes can be irrecoverable, they can be unbelievably painful. In the West, we are seeing the individual being
Hmm.
elevated as the highest form. Only a short period ago, that level of individuality was actually called selfishness. And now it's been transformed into something elevated and put like a deity on an altar. And it's not true, it's not real. We have seen selfishness lead to a breakdown in family. We have seen
Hmm.
selfishness lead to a breakdown in relationships. We have
Yep.
seen
Hmm.
it create impatience, intolerance, and all of those things that destroy the most enjoyable things about human life. When you
Hmm.
bring children into this world, you can't do it on your own. It's very,
Yeah.
very tough. Ask the mothers who are single mothers in the West whether their
Hmm.
decisions have led them to long term happiness. You know, we have
Hmm.
a saying that either you can learn from your own mistakes, but it's better to learn from the mistakes of other people and see what has happened to them and then try and incorporate them in your journey. And ultimately, the highest journey is possible when you have
Hmm.
referred to the people who have made the most journeys. And we have got so much Vidya in our Shastra, in our Puranas, in our scriptures.
Hmm.
And the Yoga Vashisht is one of my favorite scriptures, the Ramayana, Maryada Purushottam, where we are taught how to
Hmm.
navigate a social set of relationships to the highest benefit. Everybody has the
That's love.
opportunity to turn to those, to learn from them. But again,
Hmm.
we have infinity at our disposal. You have many lifetimes to come. And if you want to stumble by making mistakes and learn only from mistakes, you have the freedom to do so.
So you have talked about selfishness, and these days selfishness is also called as self-love, or maybe it has been transformed to self-love. Do you think that is that the reason for breaking these relationships, or probably in India also, recent times relationships are breaking at that point where people are more aware, or they are becoming more aware of self-love, or what do you call as selfishness?
Yeah, and this thing about self love is an interesting one. You know, we
Hmm.
have a notion of something called samskara.
Yeah.
And the question I'd ask everyone to consider when Sanatanis, Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, everybody who's a member of the Sanatani tree, flowers of
Hmm.
this Sanatani tree, go abroad, they don't study the laws of those countries. They don't study how are relationships being made here. The last 2 or 3 generations have been the most successful generations, even in the West. if you have a look at the contribution and the performance of the Sanatani family in the United Kingdom and the United States, our children, ourselves, we have the least lack of health. We have the most in terms of security and safety of assets and well-being. We have the highest level of education amongst our children. We have the lowest divorce rates, and we have the highest contribution to society. Now, isn't that a pinnacle of society? And the reason is samskaras. It's the value systems that our Sanatani traditions give to us when we are young and when we are children and when we receive them at a very early age. Now, I would say those samskaras have proven themselves in difficult places. The United Kingdom, when I came here in the 60s, I was born in Punjab in a little village and came here in the 60s. I've been here almost 60 years. And the United Kingdom was not a place of pleasantness. It was a hostile place. It was an aggressive place. And yet, even in hostility, our community has thrived and prospered. And that's because of Sanatani samskaras, which were formed over hundreds and hundreds of years. So do an empirical experiment. You know, sadhana means experiment. Sadhana is nothing except performing an experiment with your own life. And so each person should actually explore with their own lives and bear the consequences and be responsible for bearing the consequences. I think what they would find is a patient approach along the basis of Sanatani samskaras will actually give them the longest enduring positions of safety, security, and indeed Anand as well as Prem.